Well, hello again. This is Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy, coming to you. Well, we're live this afternoon, and we are recorded on. I had to check the recorder there to make sure we were actually recording. And so, if you're watching us on YouTube, you're seeing it recorded. We're delighted to have you on board for the show today, and it's going to be an interesting show. I'm really excited about it. But if you're new to the VidBlaster guy, that VidBlaster guy, let me give you just a basic primer of who we are and what we do. That VidBlaster Guy is an experiment to prove that it is possible for one guy with one PC using VidBlaster software to do a really good broadcast. Now, outstanding, excellent is what we're aiming for, but right now we'll settle for, I'll settle for mediocre, but I'd like to think it would be really good. And so we're using one PC today, and streaming it live through Dacast, DACAST.com. That's a paid CDN. They do good work. Free plug for Dacast. And recording it, and we'll post it to YouTube later, where we hope if you have to leave early and you're watching live, you can watch the rest of the show. Generally, our shows are on one of three basic categories. Either we're talking about internet broadcasting of talk shows, like this one, internet broadcasting of sporting events, which is extremely popular, and internet broadcasting of church services, which is really catching on. It's sort of an undercurrent all across the United States. I'm not sure about other countries, but definitely in the U.S. I mean, I live in a town of 12,000, and I can name you half a dozen churches that are streaming at least part of their church services live. Really cool stuff. But today we've got a kind of smorgasbord show. I'm excited about that. For the last week or 10 days, Mike Versteeg, who is the developer of VidBlaster, he lives over in Holland, near Amsterdam, a little island near Amsterdam, has been trying to publish a new release version of VidBlaster. The most recent release version of VidBlaster is version 2.09. Now, what's a release version? A release version is if you go to vidblaster.com and buy VidBlaster, you can download the VidBlaster directly from the website, and it would be version 2.09. Well, version 2.09 is a year old, and there have been, well, we're at version 2.27, so you do the math. What's that? 18 different updates to that. If you hear dogs in the background, they're going to be in trouble. The postman must be out front. Sorry about that. That's what it is when you do a live show from a home studio. But version 2.09 is the latest release candidate, and what that is essentially a version of VidBlaster that at that time, October 2011, that Mike thought was pretty darn bulletproof and worthy of being called VidBlaster for all the folks out there that wanted to buy a license to VidBlaster and use it. Now, you know, this Versteeg guy is you know, he's cut from a different cloth. He believes that this kind of development of software ought to be open. So not only could you go to his website, vidblaster.com, and download and buy a license for version 2.09, but when he worked behind the scenes on version 2.10, a beta, he put it out there on his forum for anybody that wanted to download it. So if you already had a license to 2.09, you could download 2.10 and get the benefit of the new features in 2.10 that weren't in 2.9. Now, of course, the downside of that is it's a beta. It's not a release candidate, and so therefore it could have some bugs in it, especially if it's got new features. You add a new feature, you get 1,000 users using it, 10,000 users, however many folks might be using VidBlaster at any given time, and they're going to discover some combination of keystrokes or combination of cameras or whatever that doesn't work for one reason or another. So they report that on the website as a bug, and then Mike goes to work and he either confirms that bug or said no, it's operator error or whatever the case may be. Some of the users on the forum, like myself, will go in and say, yep, that's a bug. If I follow these 5 steps, I can make the exact same results happen. So That's kind of the process with VidBlaster. And the beauty of that is if you are willing to take a little bit of a risk, you can stay up to date on the latest, greatest. And so you don't have to wait a year between versions in order to get to use the latest, greatest. For example, what was it, about a month, 6 weeks ago, maybe it's more like 8 weeks ago now, Mike released the newest instant replay, video replay module for VidBlaster, which was really cool. Slow motion replay, the ability to save clips so that you can play them later. Just a tremendously large project, one that he's not quite done with, but that was okay. He was going to release what he had and say, okay, you guys test it, and those of you that really know what you're doing, see if you can break it. Those of you that don't know what you're doing, see if you can figure it out, and maybe I can make it easier. And what a wonderful collaboration that goes on between the developer of the product and the community. And the community actually helps to improve the product. Oh, I'm going to get to that point again when we talk about Macs. So if you're in the chat room, remind me of that. Let's see, I'm checking the chat now. Mailman dead by now. Yeah, he's the mailman visits, and I have 2 Jack Russell Terriers, and they go nuts. If you've ever had Jack Russell Terriers, you understand. They very proudly brought a small lizard to me this morning. The lizard was no longer in this world, just his body. Anyway, that's another story. So one of the things that I've always loved about VidBlaster from the very beginning is this ability to have some input into what's going on. Not just, hey, this is broke, can you fix it? But on 3 occasions now, Mike has said to the general community, give me some ideas. What do you want me to work on? Now, granted, there are tons of ideas out there, and there's some projects in VidBlaster that he started that he's continuing to work on, but I think he likes the challenge of a new project too, and so he's kind of juggling several balls. I know he's got the HD optimization that's still in progress. He's got the video replay that's still in progress. And then we'll talk about the third one here towards the end of the show, which would be pretty exciting. But then other things that people ask for, and it kind of stumbles around for a while in the forum and in various discussions outside the forum, and then all of a sudden, boom, it pops up. He's been working on it for months and hasn't said anything about it, but he knows that people are interested in it. Let me give you a good example. Probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was streaming soccer from a football stadium in Fairhope, Alabama. And believe it or not, we do play soccer in Alabama, not just American football. And the venue was really limited in how we could gain access to the internet. I mean, what good does it do to have all this great software and be able to do these terrific things if you can't get it out to the internet? So I called the local phone company, and they, at my expense, put in a DSL line. Well, DSL download might be a meg, but upload is like 300K, maybe 360 on a fast day. And so I had to find out what was the optimum setup for streaming with that limitation. I wasn't limited by CPU, wasn't limited by RAM or hard drive, wasn't limited by cameras or resolutions or anything like that. My limiting factor was my internet speed. And I wanted to be able to give the best quality video and audio, of course, within that limitation. And my experiments at the very beginning, obviously anytime you're experimenting, things don't always go as you want. And I was getting, large kind of blocky, huge pixels. It was real smooth, but it was real pixelated. And then I went for, higher resolution, and then I was getting choppy video, and I had to kind of find the sweet spot. And what I found, I was using Flash Media Live Encoder, which, by the way, we're going to do a little demo on a little later. I was using Flash Media Live Encoder, and I noticed that it had 2 encoders built into it, something called VP6, which is what I was using, and then something else called H.264. And I thought, okay, well, there are two of them there. There's got to be a reason. Searched everything I could find. Obviously, I didn't search in the right places because I didn't find the answer to my question about what the difference was. But I started playing around and experimenting and seeing, okay, what's the difference? And I'd ask people what it was, and nobody was really able to give me what I considered an acceptable answer. So as I was making my experiments, I found out, in my estimation, that VP6 did a great job of giving me a great picture, but it was a big file to stream. It required a lot of pipe in order to get it out to my CDN. Whereas H.264 required a lot more CPU, but could put a better video feed through the same size pipe. So for me, it was a aha, voila moment. I was like, great, this is the solution. If I can do H.264, then I can, within this internet bandwidth limitation, I can put a great stream out there, and start using Flash Media Live Encoder separately from VidBlaster. They will work hand in hand together, and we'll talk about that again in a little bit. I was able to do that. And then I thought, it'd really be great if I didn't have to use Flash separately. VidBlaster's got the capability to use Flash behind the scenes using kind of a command line format that you don't really ever see Flash. It still uses the same CPU, but you just don't have to see it. And so I made a suggestion on the forum, hey, let's make an encoder option if you're using Flash anyway, to use H.264 instead of VP6. And that suggestion didn't go anywhere. And I would come back with all sorts of arguments and trying to start a discussion on it, and wasn't really able to get anything going. And finally, as a VidBlaster reseller, by the way, full disclosure, I'm a reseller, and you can go to my store and buy a license if you like. And you get my cell phone number and my email address so I can support you. Just a free plug for myself there. It is my show. So I had a client that wanted to buy an OEM version of VidBlaster. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And so I went back to Mike and I said, hey, look, this is kind of it was a deal killer. I mean, he had to have H.264 because at that point in time, that was the only way his CDN would allow him to stream to iPhones and iPads and Droid phones. So it was a big deal. There was a lot of money resting on it because this guy wanted to buy a lot of licenses, and it was going to be, VidBlaster was going to be basically turned into something else with a different name, but with all the same function. And so finally, through all that, we were able to get H.264 included in the OEM version. Then it showed up. It may have even showed up in a release, a beta before that, but it got in, and that was, I think, for some folks, that's going to be a really neat feature. Yeah, you can do it separately, but if you're intimidated by Flash Media Live Encoder, then it's certainly easier just to make that selection in VidBlaster, and it's there today. It's a great selection. I'm getting a chat room note that the volume is a little low, and that just could be me, because sometimes I tend to drop my voice as I talk, especially when I get on a long story. So let me see if we can increase the volume just a little bit. Yeah, I agree. It's better a little low than overmodulated, but let me try just a tad more. I don't know if that's right on the edge. Trying to balance between having enough audio volume and not picking up every little fan in the background here. Oh, by the way, a little tip. If you're doing a show in your back bedroom or even in an office studio or something like that, and you've got an air conditioner that's nearby, an hour or two before you show, crank that AC down low, and I guess you could do the same thing in the wintertime with a furnace, and preheat or pre-cool that room so that you can turn it way up or turn it off so that it doesn't come on and produce a lot of background noise during your broadcast. That's what I do here when I remember. and it really does help with the noise, because right outside me is a big window, and right outside that big window is a huge air conditioner unit that makes all sorts of racket. So that's a little tip on that. Let's see, where are we going to go next? Let's talk about the new release. Oh yeah, that's where we were going with this whole discussion. The new release for VidBlaster. What that means since 2.09 to 2.27, there have been incremental releases. Some of those were actually OEM releases. So if you go to VidBlaster forum and you look on the download section and you scan through all the available betas, you'll notice there's some numbers missing. Well, those numbers missing are where Mike worked with a customer directly for an OEM version of VidBlaster. And it might be, you know, 2 numbers in sequence, which means there was probably a first version and it had some bugs in it, and then the second version was acceptable to the client. So there's some missing numbers in there, but those missing numbers are significant because some features were probably developed in that OEM that ended up being incorporated into later betas. So we get up to 2.7. I've got a little timeline here that I want to run through with you. You don't have to make notes because you can go to the website and see it, but I thought I'd just sort of blast through it pretty quickly. Of all the changes between 2.09 and 2.27, because Mike would really like to release 2.27 as the latest released version, so that when somebody buys VidBlaster, buys a license to VidBlaster, they're getting 2.27 as the official release instead of the old 2.29, because there have been huge differences. 2.10, 2.10 was a major change in the code that optimized it for HD. Granted, the work is not done yet on that, I don't think, but it did a great job of increasing the speed of VidBlaster. The Camera 2 module uses a lot less resources. The latency is a lot less in that version, and when idle, its use drops to nothing, and that was a pretty big change at that point. If you use the preview monitor, and you have to use a program monitor, those are using, as of 2.10, a custom video renderer, and that reduced the amount of CPU that was required. And then, of course, with every version, there were some bugs that were fixed and some minor tweaks here and there. 2.11, the RTSP in module came out. 2.12, the RTMP in module came out. Now, this was for the broadcast and studio editions only, but the significance of that was if you were trying VidBlaster with a trial edition, the trial edition is the studio edition. The only difference, the only restriction, is a watermark on the program screen, the program monitor, and I think the VVD out as well. So this was a big change. Suddenly, you could test this feature before you used it that had only been available in the broadcast version, the $2,000 version. Another big change in 2.11 was an improvement to the chroma keyer. Say that 10 times quickly. And that in 2.12, the modules don't renumber when you delete one. Used to be you could have, maybe 5 cameras going, and they were attached to various video effect modules, or you could have a video overlay module and it was attached to a camera module or a video effect module. And if you deleted one, all the ones, if you deleted number 3, well, 4, 5, and 6 became 3, 4, and 5, which messed up any configuration that you had depending upon a particular module number. Anyway, that got fixed, and for a lot of us, that was a big, big deal. Versions 13, 14, and 15 were OEM OEM versions. 1.6 added the MPEG recorder, and that's a big deal. The MPEG recorder, of course, MPEG format is a very popular video format. It is much more, what's the right word, stingier with CPU cycles than the traditional video recorder. It also had built into it the ability to record from any module. So you could record from just the camera module with the MPEG recorder and then record your broadcast with the regular recorder. Yeah, you were asking your CPU to do a lot of duty, but it was possible. If you had a i7 Extreme, for example, you could probably handle all that easily. You could have multiple MPEG recorders, but just in the broadcast version. There was a built-in, not a built-in, but an adjustable audio delay for this MPEG recorder, because some people experienced a little bit of audio delay. There was an audio drift compensator to keep it in sync. So that was a pretty big improvement, 2.16. And camera 2 had an improvement to the deinterlacer, which was a big deal, 2.16. 2.17, sort of a minor beta release, added an auto slider advance for the PowerPoint and fixed some bugs. 2.18 was a big deal, I thought, because the API, what is that? The application programming language that's built into VidBlaster, which was only previously available to folks that had the broadcast version, again, the $2,000 version, wasn't available in the trial version, which was the studio version, the $1,000 version. The API was now available in the studio version, which meant it was available in the trial edition so that folks that were testing could test the API. And part of Mike's Versteeg's reasoning in this was, let's open up the API to the community and let folks write applications, let them write software. And lots of stuff has been written. Not real widely distributed, but I think like anything else, it has to mature, and it's not yet mature in that sense. Some new API commands were actually added with version 2.18, and some have been added since then. 2.19 was, again, a major release, I thought, because the new virtual video device had been released. Now, prior to this, for about 3 or 4 months maybe, VidBlaster didn't play well all of a sudden with Skype and Google Hangout and things like that, and it was because of the video device that was built into VidBlaster. Those programs had changed. VidBlaster hadn't, so Mike got a new VVD, and we're all good again. We're streaming to Skype, we're streaming to Google Hangouts, we're streaming to just about anything that will accept a webcam input. The VidBlaster VVD would work for that. In fact, that's what I'm using right now on this broadcast with Flash Media Live Encoder is the VVD out. The video out module, which is where the VVD is. So that was a pretty big deal, and if you're a Wirecast fan, this is one of those times where VidBlaster was ahead of Wirecast. Wirecast's VVD didn't come out, I think, until the end of the summer, and this was probably mid-spring or something like that. 2.20, for those broadcast users, a diagnostics module came out, which basically allowed them to see CPU usage on each individual core and not just the average of all of them. And then there were some additions to the scoreboard module. You could add team names now. Instead of having to have a graphic with the team names already built into them, you could add the team names on the fly. So if you did a lot of different kinds of teams, it was really useful. 2.21 was my most favorite addition, because that's when slow motion instant replay came out. Not a finished product. Again, these were betas, but it allowed us to see what it was going to look like. The controller and the source were released, 2 different modules. The source, you could have as many source modules as you needed for 1 per camera, obviously, and that they were all sort of controlled through the controller module, and that was fun. That was a long thing, and that was one of those deals that was really a result of Mike asking the VidBlaster community, "What do you want me to work on next?" I voted for instant replay, and a lot of other folks voiced their opinions, and he tallied the scores, and he said, okay, we're going to do instant replay. And he asked for a lot of help from folks that had done this professionally as to how it should look and how it should function, and they worked with him out in the open. I mean, you can go to the forum, you can read all the notes today of all the discussions about how this stuff should work. I didn't understand half of it, but I knew it sounded good, and I was delighted when it came out. Now, it's not yet finished. We still have to have the ability to permanently store clips, but it's very usable the way it is now. I mean, I love it. I've used it quite a bit. Versions 22 and 23 were OEM versions, and those were ones that I was personally involved in. My client buying VidBlaster and asking Mike to modify it so that it would suit his purposes. So that was versions 22 and 23. Version 24 had some kind of miscellaneous improvements, fixed some registration and activation bugs. 25 again had, it was kind of a maintenance update, I guess you'd say. It fixed some bugs and included buffering for the RTSP and RTMP in module. And then 2.26 was the first release candidate. And that overall improved some stability for some folks, fixed some bugs and minor changes that were there before, and as with any new version, introduced a bug or two, or else people just discovered ones that they hadn't discovered before. And so we've now arrived at version 2.27. If you're new to VidBlaster, go to the forum. It's forum.vidblaster.com, and go to the download sections. Find 2.27, download it, try it. And give your feedback on the forum of what do you think, especially if not necessarily improvements that need to be made, because we're pretty much through the improvement stage for 2.27 for today. I mean, there are going to be other improvements, but probably not in this release. But this will be the release that will be sold and marketed as VidBlaster for the foreseeable future. Will there be another release candidate in a year or 6 months? Well, it just depends. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. It depends on what features are added and whether they're significant enough to warrant a new release candidate. But it's been a wild ride. It's been an exciting ride. And one of the things I love about it the best is that it's an open forum. Now, do people's feelings sometimes get hurt because people speak harshly? Yeah, that happens. But that's life. But you don't have to submit a form. You don't have to go to a website and fill out something and request something and hope somebody sees it and emails you back or something like this. There's much more interaction and give and take. And while sometimes feathers get ruffled, and I've ruffled a few and had mine ruffled a couple of times, I would much prefer that because I know where I stand. I know what's going on. I may not like where I stand, but at least I know where I stand. And other times, like with the instant replay, I know where I stood. And I was delighted, excited. That's, as a reseller, that's going to sell a lot of software, not just for me, but for VidBlaster. So that's kind of the update on 2.27. And we hope to see that as a release candidate coming up soon. The reason I keep looking off to the side is I'm checking the chat room and making sure those guys are behaving there. One of the things I promised at the outset is that I would show you how to stream to 2 different CDNs at the same time. And you think, okay, when would I ever need to do this? Well, let me give you an example, because I've done this, and it worked. And it would probably work in lots of different things, but I was in a pay-per-view situation with some sporting events. And I had a high-quality 864 by 480, not HD, but I would consider high-quality, standard definition, smooth 30 frames a second, 800 BPS stream that really, really, really looked good. And that was my pay-per-view stream. But I knew there would be a lot of people that wouldn't even bother to tune in unless there was something free to look at. And so I thought, well, I can have an audience of, 50 pay-per-view, or I can have an audience of 250 free. And I said, well, let's see what we can, let's play with it. Let's experiment. Let's find out what works and what doesn't work. So I had my high-quality stream, and then I had simultaneous to that, and my high-quality stream went to the cast. And then I had a low-quality stream, probably 200 BPS, maybe 150. I don't remember right now. It was probably like 150 video, and then 20 or 30 or 40 audio, and streamed that through Ustream and made it available as an embed on my website. In fact, obviously both of them were, and found out what happened was that, some people would watch the whole game on the free stream. They didn't care, as long as they could hear. Audio is important. As long as they could hear what was going on and sort of see what was going on, they were okay. But there were other folks that really wanted to see, especially when we were doing instant replay. They wanted to see what was going on. They wanted to see the expression on people's faces. They wanted to see the ball go into the net. Whatever the case was, they wanted to see it. And I could watch in the stats later, the analytics, of how folks moved into the pay-per-view, not before the game, but in the middle of the first half. All of a sudden, I was having an influx of folks that moved over. And, of course, as part of our calling of the game, and I was actually calling the game live, I was one of the announcers, I would make a point of mentioning, especially in the first half, every 10 minutes or so, if you're not seeing what you want to see, there is a higher quality available feed. It's $4.95. That's $4.95. It's $5. You'll drop more than that on coffee at Starbucks. And was able to convince a lot of folks to move over. As an alternative strategy to that, since we were doing a series of games, not only did we have a single game pay-per-view, but we had a, buy one, get four free, or go to the grocery store and buy everything you want for one price. So you could watch all the games for the rest of the season for $14.95. And we had a lot of folks that went from the low-quality feed to the season ticket because the low-quality feed got them there. And then we were able to upsell them on the season ticket. And we continued to do the low-quality feed for the rest of the season. Lots of folks watched. That's all they watched the whole time. I guess it depends on your level of interest. But let me cue up that video. And let's see if we can't get that to run now. Well, let's stop and turn up the volume to it, shall we? Let's try again. Hey, this is Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy, coming to you with a kind of a quick, I don't know if it's a tutorial or a demo. You'll have to decide. But basically the problem sometimes is you are streaming a show or a broadcast or a ball game or something like that, and you would like it to go to more than one CDN. Maybe you have a pay-per-view that you are doing of a high-quality feed, and then you want to give a free option of a lower quality feed. How can you get two feeds going out at one time? Well, it's really a lot simpler than you think. If you've got the VidBlaster that you see below me right here, and I've got the video out, well, where is it right there? The video out module right there with the VidBlaster VVD clicked on, that means I can send whatever my video is to Flash Media Live Encoder. And I can run two, sometimes I can run more than two, but two instances of Flash Media Live Encoder simultaneously. Now, I've got to have an i7 PC. I've got to have enough CPU horsepower in order to make this happen. But let me show you what I've got. I've got it already pulled up here for you. Let's do, there's one instance of Flash Media Live Encoder going to Decast. I haven't started the stream because I don't want to stream it right now, but I would click the start button to stream that one. And my second instance of Flash Media Live Encoder is set up to go, in this case, to Bamboozer. And so I could have both of them streaming simultaneously. Now, obviously, I don't know if you can see the small print down here on the Bamboozer screen, but it needs to be set for 320 by 240 at 25 frames a second or something like that, and streaming at 200 BPS or something that's pretty low. In fact, a tip, if you're trying to convince folks to watch the high quality feed, you obviously want to make the low quality feed not that great, so you can reduce the bit rate, and it will reduce the quality of the feed. So that's in a nutshell. It's pretty simple how to use VidBlaster and Flash Media Live Encoder to stream the same stream to two different CDNs simultaneously. You heard it on that VidBlaster Guy. Talk to you soon. And there we go. You heard it on that VidBlaster Guy. 2 streams. And I have done it before. It was not the smoothest thing in the world, but I've done it with 3 streams. One of the bugs that seems to creep in when you do that is that the first 2 instances of Flash I can get going there, but as I do the 3rd one, sometimes it'll knock out the second one, or the 3rd one won't take, and it'll take several tries, as it were, to get all 3 streams or all 3 instances of Flash Media Live Encoder up and usable at the same time. Never done it with more than 3. 3 is the most I would ever attempt. But that's how to stream to more than 1 CDN simultaneously using Flash Media Live Encoder. And that will work. You don't have to use VidBlaster for that tip to work for you. That's a tip that would work with any program that has a virtual video device, kind of a video out format to it. I would imagine XSplit or Wirecast. Those might work the same way. So let's move on to our next subject, and this is one that I'm really, really excited about, which is our project. This is our Making Money project with VidBlaster. 4 or 5 weeks ago, Amnon Nissan with Nissan Communications was on as our special guest. In fact, that was the second time he was on. He was actually our very first guest on one of our alpha shows. And Amnon is a creative genius. Sometimes I think he intends it that way, and sometimes I think he backs into it. But nevertheless, he has blown my mind with some of his thinking. But it's simple stuff, and I have a very small mind, so that's probably why it got blown so easily. He designed and built a studio in his home because he has this great Sunday morning radio show, Computers 2K Now. Don't ask about the name. It's a long story, but it's computers2know.com. Live every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And he and these guys get on there and they talk for 4 hours about tech or about politics a little bit, or about cars a little bit, or about phones a little bit, or about Macs versus PCs and ISPs, and they'll take call-ins. Apparently it used to be a radio show. It migrated to kind of a radio show on the internet, and then it became internet only. And they'll get 7, 8, 9,000 viewers on a Sunday morning. Great show. It's free. I think I'm one of the sponsors, so I guess but it's not a moneymaker. None of those guys are going to retire off of that. But Amnon said, I've got this studio that I built for that. And by the way, all the guys that appear on the show, none of them are in his studio. They're all brought in by Skype. He said, why don't I open this up to the local business community and invite them, if they want to come in and do a regular show as a way to communicate with their clients, their customers, their base. And so he shared this with a friend, and she said, I'll do that. And so in she comes. She comes in, 1 day a week for an hour and does a show. Amnon is the behind-the-scenes, producer, director, whatever you call that role. He's making things happen. And she's communicating with 1,000, 1,500 of her closest friends on a weekly basis. She told a friend, because she was so excited about what her show was doing, so that friend wanted to do it. That friend told another friend. Before you know it, he's got 4 or 5 customers, clients, that come to his studio on a weekly basis and pay him money to broadcast a show. Now, he archives it. He's developed websites and done a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, I'm sure. But that is, I think, a very sustainable business model. So I said, well, I'm going to try that. And I'm going to try it the same way Amnon did it. I'm going to give away the first one. If I can find somebody that'll take it for free, maybe it just might work. Hey, Jim, glad to have you on the show. Good to see you in. In fact, Jim and I were talking about this just the other day. And this client is a local pastor, and he wants to, and he's written a book, and he wants to not only sell books, which, you know, I believe him, he really doesn't care about selling books. He just wanted the discipline of writing it. But he wants to spread the message of what was in his book. And so we thought, well, let's do a show. Let's do a series of shows. We don't have to have an open-ended commitment. Let's do a series of shows. So he says, okay, let's do a series of shows. He's all excited about it. He's writing out, you know, what he wants the topics to be on and all these shows. And the benefit to me is it gives me the opportunity to go from a single guy operation. You remember, one man, one PC, one awesome broadcast, to you know, somebody else is the talent. Not that I'm that great a talent, but somebody else is the talent. Somebody else is bringing the message, and I'm doing the tech part behind the scenes. I'm providing them with that which they could not provide for themselves. And so I'm going to have to rearrange my studio. I need to do a studio tour for you guys sometime. That might be fun. I got to rearrange my studio because right now it's set up for one guy. And my mind is just racing with all the different possibilities of folks that might want something like this to communicate with their clients on. And it has a dual advantage, I think. Advantage number one is it's live. And so the folks that are watching it live are getting up to the minute, latest, greatest. You know, if we're in the mortgage industry and we're talking about interest rates, if it's a live show, this is the rate as of now. Call me this afternoon. We can do business at this rate. If it's a recorded show, if the talent, as they plan out how they do their show, obviously some of the information that they're going to pass along will have to be beneficial by its live nature. But other information ought to be more suitable for archive purposes, for people that are interested in getting a mortgage. One day, what do I need to know? Much like that VidBlaster Guy show, where a lot of our information is critical need now stuff, and some of it is people stumble on us on YouTube, and like our friend Ken. Glad to have you on the show, Ken. And found us through YouTube, and now he's watching live, and he's going to get lots of great information. He's going to meet other people who are doing things that he might be interested in, so his circle of influence gets bigger. The same thing happens. If you're not already in your town, there's probably a group of business professionals that meet on a regular basis to exchange referrals. In my neck of the woods, there's an organization called BMI. I think that's what they are. And there's another one that's local to my county, the Baldwin Business Council. And I'm a member of the Baldwin Business Council. We meet every Wednesday morning, and there are other professionals in that group. There's somebody in the mortgage business, the real estate business, an attorney, a title attorney, a landscaper, you know, the list, a CPA, insurance guy, the list goes on and on and on, of all the professionals that would like to increase their business. And we pledge to market the other people's business. So when I bump into somebody that needs a CPA, I'm like, oh, here you go. You need to call Rita. She's the best CPA I know. And I know quite a few, by the way. And so we help each other build their business. And this is a great opportunity for me to say to that community, hey, guys, I will, you know, normally I want to charge $5 trillion for this. That's a number you might hear tonight if you're going to watch the debates. But for you, it's only $2.5 trillion. I'm going to give it to you for half what I think it's valued at, because you've helped me in this group, and this is kind of a new thing, and I think it's going to really help you, and we're going to sit down and talk about not just the show aspect of it, but how you can make it benefit you in your business, with your website, with new clients, potential clients, how can it help feed leads to you, and all those kinds of things. How can this benefit you? So that's the Making Money project that I'm doing now, and I want to kind of keep you guys apprised of my progress, because I think it's going to be something that number one, if you're looking for a way to make money with this great stuff that we do, this internet broadcasting, then I can either prove or disprove this as a way of doing it, and you can get all the inside scoop. If you're already doing something like this, or you're really serious about it, shoot me an email, tom@thatvidblasterguy.com, because we're going to be putting together, I guess you would call it sort of a focus group of people that really want to be serious in talking about this, and do it on a Zoom, kind of a Google Hangout meeting a time or two, and chat about it, maybe have somebody make a presentation, and then, you know, talk about ways that have worked for us or ways that haven't worked for us, and begin to sort of fine-tune this concept, because I think there's something that we can do there. It's going to be good stuff. So if you're interested in being a part of this group, or if you just want to, you know, put your name into me and say, hey, Tom, I'm doing this, I'd like to talk to you about it, you know, we can set up and do a Skype call or chat on the phone, or just email back and forth, whatever. tom@thatvidblasterguy.com. Oh, and if you're watching on YouTube and you just want to hit me, you know, shoot me an email and want to chat, you know, please feel free to do that. I'm always love to chat about this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm doing a show about it, for crying out loud. All right, so let's change gears here a little bit, and I think we've talked about the multiple CDN screen making money project, the version 2.27, which brings us to really the big cheese, and this is VidBlaster on a Apple device, a Macintosh. Boy, am I stepping into it deep right here. Let me back up a step. Several times over the last couple of years, Mike Versteeg, the developer of VidBlaster, has been asked, did he ever expect that he would code VidBlaster for a Mac? And the answer was always pretty quickly, nah. Why? Why should I do that? You know, the PC install base is so much greater than the Mac base. Why should I do that? There's no reason to do that. There's no compelling reason to do that. And simultaneous to him answering the question about Macs, he's also asking folks, what do you want me to work on next? You know, do you want a new virtual video device? Yeah, we do. So he made one. You want instant replay? Yeah, we do. So he did it. You want me to begin to develop or design VidBlaster for HD resolution? Yeah, so he's working on that. And the other day, was it on Twitter? Yeah. It was just like a one-line tweet. What would VidBlaster look like on a Mac? I was stunned. There he is out there in the blue on VidBlaster, on Twitter, basically inviting comments to him. In fact, I think he even included his email address. If you're interested, let me know. I would love to have been a little birdie around when the discussions were had that led up to that moment. Now, since then, this was 2-3 weeks ago, there have been other little postings here and there. I noticed one on the International Association of Internet Broadcasters on their forum. There was a little blurb popped out about VidBlaster on the Mac. About a week ago, Mike tweeted that he had been accepted by Apple as a Mac developer. Accepted by Apple as a Mac developer. That doesn't sound like something you do like, I'm going to go to the movies and get some popcorn. That sounds like something you do if you're getting serious about investing time, and that's certainly what it takes from his perspective. I guess maybe you need to own a Mac, but time for the most part to develop VidBlaster on the Mac. So I don't have any inside knowledge, but I can read the tea leaves here, and I see a progression towards the development of VidBlaster on the Mac. Now, what is this going to mean for VidBlaster? What is this going to mean for other similar programs to VidBlaster? What is it going to mean for PC VidBlaster license owners? I think there are a number of folks out there that in the internet broadcasting, can I call us an industry, that are Mac users. Might be 50-50. I don't know. The International Association of Internet Broadcasters has a poll up, who uses PCs, who uses Macs. There are a lot of people, more people that's responded to that poll that used PCs than Macs, I think, if I saw that. Maybe I've got it backwards, but anyway, it was heavily weighted one way or the other. I think it was PCs. But in reading different forums, not just the VidBlaster forum, but in reading the Wirecast forum and the vMix forum and the XSplit forum and some other related streaming forums, the conversation frequently will be, Mac questions. I'm out there just sort of looking around to see what I can find out about people that might need VidBlaster. But when it becomes a Mac question, I was like, okay, well, that's the end of it for me as a reseller. But to be able to have Mac as an option for VidBlaster as a reseller, I think it's a great idea. There are a lot of folks that are in communities of other software products that have expressed to me, I'd love to use VidBlaster, but it doesn't run on my Mac. That is, Mac is what I've got, and that's what I'm running. And I'm not interested in Boot Camp because that's just Windows. I like the Mac operating system, and I want it to work with my Mac. So that's all I know, folks. That's all I can tell you. All I can tell you is what I know. Well, in this case, I can't. I've told you all I can tell you. Let me put it that way. So keep watching. It sure looks like it's coming down the pike. VidBlaster on Mac. Can you believe it? It's probably going to be pretty cool. That's the story. I had planned to do a couple other things during the broadcast today. I got so carried away in talking to you about the release candidate and all that other stuff that I completely forgot about them. And I think it's just it's too late now. So if you're watching and you're in the chat room, and if you got some questions, love to respond to your questions. And let me check the chat here. And okay, we've got a question from earlier when we were in the Making Money project section. It says, what if your client was in his own studio remote from you? Could this be streamed on your channel website? Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yep. And Jim Moline has responded, said yes by using Skype or Uvu or other source, and that's exactly right. Certainly it would be easy. In fact, I think I've drawn it out on paper. I think you could basically remotely produce an entire broadcast. Instead of bringing a guest in on Skype, you would bring the host in on Skype and then switch the whole show from your studio, and your guest might be across town or they might be in another country, another time zone. It certainly could be done, and I think be done pretty easily, assuming a healthy internet connection. That's really the problem. Kent's talking in the chat about having a slow PC, and that can slow you down too. But I'll tell you what, having a slow internet connection, being stuck with DSL, is no good. Here I've got the local TV cable, Mediacom, and they've got a 50 down, 5 up program, and that's what we've got. And I'm really amazed that a little small town like ours could have something like that. But we're able to do a lot with 5 up. Let's see. I've got a comment in the chat that says, in order to be an Apple developer, you just have to submit an application. Well, that's pretty easy. That's good. So maybe it's not as huge a commitment on Mike Versteeg's part as we think. We'll see. We'll just have to keep our finger on the pulse on that one and see what it ends up being. really excited just to give you a glimpse as to where we're going with the upcoming shows. Um, we've got promises for Daniel Frost, who is a developer in Sweden, I believe, who's done a lot of work with the API for VidBlaster, to come on and do a show about API. So you want to stay, if you're not already one of my Twitter friends or whatever you call that on Twitter, by all means, it's at VidBlaster, at that, what is it? Yeah, it's at that VidBlaster Guy. So join my little Twitter, follow me on Twitter, I guess that's the way it's supposed to be. And you'll keep up to date on that, so because you want to know about the API. I mean, that's gonna be huge as that matures. Also, I've got some guests that are coming up. They're going to talk about church broadcasting. They're going to talk more about sports broadcasting, and about talk show broadcasting. And I think there's actually a list on the website under. Well, let's see. What is the website? You think I would know what my own website says? Oh yeah, upcoming guests. There it is. Kenneth Fox from Martin Luther High School up in Wisconsin is going to come and talk about streaming high school sports. He's done a lot of work with that. Ken Fishback with Spur Radio is going to come in and talk about streaming rodeos. If you're not from the U.S. and you've never seen a rodeo, you definitely want to tune in for this one. It's really cool. Sheldon Neal will be back on with Slice TV. He's doing some great things with Slice TV. Now, Sheldon started out doing football and basketball, and now he's into traditional, what I would call video production. And he's got a great 30-second ad spot that he's developed on not teenage voting, but I guess young people getting out and voting, and high school students talking about why you should vote. Very well done. Jim Moline, I know Jim's on it today, has promised at some point that he would come on the show too and talk about what he's doing with his church, and some of the streaming going on there. And Jim and I have also been talking about some of the business possibilities with VidBlaster. So some good shows yet to come. And if you've got an idea for a show or a question for a show, please feel free. Let me get back to my chat room screen right here so I can see if we're talking about something. No, I think we're all on board with chat. If you've got some ideas for a show, or if you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email and let's talk about it, and let's see what you've got going on and what you can share with other folks. Sometimes sharing, we kind of get in a rut and want to share our successes, but sometimes sharing what doesn't work can be as important for somebody that's just starting out. Not that we want to keep them from trying everything, but sometimes they're just, there's some paths that it's just not worth going down, because there's nothing good down there at the end of the path. By all means, follow us on Twitter, that VidBlaster Guy. We will be live again next Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock United Kingdom time, and 6 a.m. in Sydney, Australia. If you're interested in VidBlaster and would like to know more or chat with me about it, shoot me an email, Tom@thatvidblaster Guy. If you'd like to just go ahead and buy it, go to our store, and you can buy a license via PayPal. We'll shoot you the license key over. If you want to know more about VidBlaster, go ahead and go to the forum.vidblaster.com, and download the latest beta 2.27 and play with it on your PC. Don't think you can break it. Don't think you can break your PC with it. If you have questions, fire them off to me. I'm glad to help. I'm Tom Sinclair. I'm that VidBlaster Guy. It's been my pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to be with you on YouTube later. We'll be back next week. See you then. Well, maybe if I can get this program to stop.